Hey everyone, it's Drew with Diving Sports, and I want to talk a little bit about dry suits, the types, why we wear them, how they work, and give you a couple of tips on how to use them. So first of all, it's really important to know what a dry suit is. It's a full suit that creates an airspace over your entire body. The traditional suits that we wear for scuba diving have neck seals and wrist seals, so that the only thing actually exposed to water are going to be your hands and your head. We also often wear thick neoprene hoods and gloves, or even rubber dry gloves to keep our hands warm, so that we're a little bit happier while we dive. The airspace inside of the suit is what's going to keep you warm. A traditional wetsuit lets some water in and hopefully traps it there so that your body can heat it up and keep you warm and slow down the transfer of heat to the outside water. It only works if the suit fits really tightly, and even then, because you are still wet, you will eventually get cold faster than if you were dry. However, just because you're dry, it doesn't mean you're going to be warm. It's a lot like a rain jacket in that way. It will keep you dry, but depending on the water temperature, that might not be enough to keep you warm on its own. That's why in colder water like Vancouver, we typically wear thick, warm undergarments to help regulate the temperature, which allows us to dive longer and be more comfortable. So the downside to all that warm air that gets trapped inside your suit is that it becomes super buoyant. On average, divers in Vancouver wear between 28 and 38 pounds of lead to help them sink. Compare that to, 6 to 10 pounds of lead worn in warmer water. That's quite a big difference. So the reason why dry suits are harder to get used to is because all the air you have inside the dry suit is going to move around and change volume as you dive. So managing that becomes really, really important. To start the dive, you will need to deflate almost all of the air from the dry suit, and then going down, any remaining gas inside is going to compress and start to squeeze around you. So this also causes significant buoyancy loss. To compensate for this, you need to add enough air at least to reduce the squeeze and help keep you warmer. Now you have to remember that the air you add will change your buoyancy, so you need to manage and balance that with any of the air that you add to your BCD. Once you've become neutrally buoyant, the work is not over. The hard part is making sure all that air doesn't end up somewhere where you don't want it. With a BCD, it can only go so far. The bladder isn't really that big for the most part. It's about this big. Even then, most divers will remember the struggle of trying to get that hose and deflate button up all the way to let the air out when they're first learning. The dry suit is the exact same, except the air can go all the way down into your arms and legs and get into your feet. This can cause significant problems, since the majority of dry suits only have one deflate valve, and that's going to be on your shoulder right here. If you cannot move the air to your shoulder, you will never get it out. This can lead to an uncontrolled ascent. Dry suit diving tends to be more physical than wetsuit diving. Not only do you generally wear more weight, but because that air can move around, you need to put more effort to keep it under control. Now, there are a few different types of dry suits. In general, we have shell suits, neoprene suits, and vulcanized rubber suits. Shell suits are probably the most common nowadays because the materials are really tough and they're really lightweight compared to the other two. Popular shell suits are made of trilaminate material, basically a bunch of layered material all glued together, ranging from things like nylon, Cordura, and Kevlar. Shell suits are not usually the warmest suits, but like I said, they are lightweight, which makes them great for portability. Shell suits also don't change their buoyancy characteristics as you descend, which makes them ideal for deep or technical diving. Neoprene dry suits are also a popular choice, specifically if you get cold easily or you want something super tough. Neoprene rubber is usually pretty thick, about 4 to 7 millimeters, so they are really durable and can stand up against a ton of abuse. They are also a lot warmer than a trilam suit because the neoprene actually does a lot to insulate you on its own. You do have to keep in mind that a standard thick neoprene dry suit will compress and lose buoyancy and insulation as you descend deeper, which makes them a less ideal choice for technical divers, but they are awesome if you are doing recreational or working dives in cold water. So there is a version of neoprene suit called a compressed neoprene dry suit, which basically squishes the neoprene down to try to eliminate its buoyancy. This way, you get a suit that is a little bit warmer than a shell, but doesn't change buoyancy as you dive. They are as heavy as a regular neoprene suit though, and usually quite a bit expensive, but they are very comfortable to wear and quite tough. Vulcanized rubber is probably the least common suit for recreational divers, but for commercial divers who need the toughest suit, it is probably the one they're going to go for. They are super heavy, durable, and easy to clean for divers in less than awesome locations. So, with a little better understanding of dry suits and why we use them, Here are a few tips for diving your dry suit that will hopefully make your life a little bit easier. So tip number 1, be aware of your body position. You cannot easily control the air in your dry suit if you don't even know where it is. Remember, air only travels up, so be aware of where up is. If I have my hands above my head, all of the air is going into my wrists. If I have cold wrists, awesome. But if I'm trying to deflate and start a dive, none of the air can escape out of the valve down here, so I'm not going to be going anywhere. We have the same scenario with divers getting air in their feet. If you let a little bit too much air into your feet and don't fix it, eventually it will want to pull you upside down as it expands and gets more buoyant. You can deflate the air in your shoulders all you want, but if you don't drop your feet below your waist and move that airspace up into your shoulders, you will continually being pulled upside down. Tip number 2, be proactive. You only have one slow deflate valve and a lot of space for the air to occupy. If you aren't paying attention and start ascending too quickly, you are going to have a lot of air to deflate and it's not going to happen as fast as you'd like. If you think about it, if you have all of the air in your feet, it has to travel your entire body length and go through all of your big fluffy layers before it even gets to the shoulder dump valve, and then you have to deflate it enough to change your buoyancy. Once you start adjusting your body position and your buoyancy more proactively instead of reacting to everything, life is going to get a lot easier. Tip number 3, use your body. You control the air in the dry suit, the air does not control you. Now I know that sounds kind of silly to say, but I cannot tell you the amount of times that we see divers learning to use a dry suit and they just become wet noodles as soon as the air starts to pull them around. If you don't want air somewhere in the suit, get it out of there, right? You physically have to do the work. Unfortunately, it won't just magically happen no matter how much you just will it to. You have to engage more than just your arms or your feet to be able to control the combination of weight and air. All of your core muscles, your finning, your legs, everything else have to work in coordination to be able to move around in the dry suit. So we went through a little bit about why we wear dry suits, the types of dry suits, how they work, and a few tips that should help you dive easier. Now, I have to mention that this, of course, is not to stand in place of proper diving instruction. If you have never dived in a dry suit, you should absolutely contact your local dive shop and look into getting trained and certified in a dry suit before you go out on your own. So, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more dive stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.